The scent of garlic and basil had long since stopped making my stomach growl. After 8 months working at Carina's, the upscale Italian restaurant in the heart of downtown, the aromas that once made my mouth water now just clung to my uniform like a second skin. I'd scrub my hands raw every night, but the smell of expensive food I couldn't afford always lingered beneath my fingernails. It was a Tuesday evening, quieter than usual. The kind of night where the soft clink of silverware against porcelain echoed through the dining room, and I could hear my own breathing as I cleared table 7 for the 3rd time. My feet ached in the worn flats I'd resoled twice already. The hole in the left one was growing again, and I could feel the cold floor through the cardboard I'd stuffed inside that morning. I was nobody here, just another face in a white shirt and black slacks, refilling water glasses and nodding politely, while wealthy patrons complained about wine temperatures. Invisible. Forgettable. Exactly what I needed to be while I saved every penny for my mother's medication. The lupus was eating through our savings faster than I could earn them, and my 2 jobs, this one and the early morning shift at the bakery, barely kept us afloat. "Table 12 needs attention," Marco, the floor manager, hissed as he passed me. His cologne was too strong, probably trying to mask the cigarette smell he thought we didn't notice. I grabbed a fresh pitcher of water and turned toward the back corner booth, the one reserved for special guests, the one that had been empty all night until 20 minutes ago. That's when I first saw him. He sat with his back to the wall. I noticed that immediately, the way he'd positioned himself to watch both the entrance and the emergency exit. A man in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my entire year's rent sat beside him, speaking in low tones into a phone. Another stood near the kitchen door, arms crossed, his jacket cut in a way that couldn't quite hide the bulk underneath. But it was him who commanded the space. Dark hair touched with silver at the temples, a jawline that could have been carved from marble, and eyes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. He wasn't looking at me, wasn't looking at anyone, but I felt the weight of his presence like a physical thing pressing against my chest. A small girl sat beside him in a booster seat, no more than 4 years old, with dark curls that bounced as she colored aggressively in a princess coloring book. She wore a velvet dress the color of midnight, far too formal for a child, and patent leather shoes that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. "Papa, I want the stars pasta," she announced in that imperious way only small children can manage, her accent carrying the musical lilt of Italian. His entire face transformed when he looked at her. The hard edges softened, the dangerous aura dimmed just slightly, and something almost human flickered in those coal dark eyes. "Stella pasta, mia stellina," he corrected gently, touching her nose. "You must practice your English, remember? But I like Italian better," she pouted, and I watched this powerful man, who had 3 armed guards in a public restaurant, melt like butter in the sun. I approached the table with my pitcher, keeping my eyes down, my smile professional and distant. "Good evening." "Can I refill your water?" The man in the charcoal suit looked up sharply, his hand moving incrementally toward his jacket. The guard by the kitchen door straightened, but he, the man who commanded such immediate deference, merely glanced at me with the brief, dismissive attention one gives to furniture. "Yes," he said, his voice carrying the hint of an Italian accent wrapped in something darker, something that suggested expensive private schools and inherited power. I poured carefully, hyper-aware of the tension radiating from his security team. The little girl looked up at me with enormous brown eyes, and I couldn't help the genuine smile that crossed my face. Children were the same everywhere, innocent, unaware of the weight of money and power that separated their world from mine. "Your dress is very pretty," I told her softly. Her face lit up like Christmas morning. "Papa bought it for me, and I have shoes that match and everything." She kicked her feet to demonstrate, nearly knocking over her crayons. "Sophia?" her father said quietly, but there was no real reprimand in it. He steadied the crayons with one elegant hand, and I noticed the scars across his knuckles. Old, faded, but unmistakable. These weren't hands that had always held wine glasses in upscale restaurants. "Sorry," Sophia whispered, and continued coloring with renewed focus. I finished pouring and stepped back, already forgotten. That's how it worked. People like him didn't see people like me, Not really. We were part of the landscape, the machinery that kept their world running smoothly while we scrambled to keep our own worlds from falling apart. The evening continued its quiet rhythm. I served salads, delivered entrees, cleared plates. The man at table 12, I'd heard Marco call him Mr. D'Angelo, in an obsequious whisper, ordered the lobster risotto and mac and cheese for Sophia. He cut her pasta into small pieces with the meticulous care of someone who'd done it 1,000 times, wiping sauce from her chin, listening intently as she chattered about her day with a nanny I'd never meet, and activities I couldn't begin to imagine. There was something achingly lonely about watching them, a father and daughter in a fortress of security, surrounded by people but utterly isolated. He never smiled, not fully. The softness in his eyes when he looked at her was undercut by constant vigilance, his attention flickering to every person who entered the restaurant, every unexpected sound. What had made him this way? What kind of life required 3 armed guards for a simple dinner with your daughter? I was clearing table 9 when it happened. The front door chimed. A sound I'd heard 1,000 times, meaningless and mundane. But something changed in that moment, some invisible shift in the atmosphere that made the hair on my arm stand up. 3 men entered. They wore casual clothes, jeans, jackets, baseball caps pulled low, nothing remarkable, except for the way they moved, too purposeful, too coordinated, and the bulges under their jackets that my months of watching wealthy patrons had taught me to ignore suddenly seemed anything but innocent. Mr. D'Angelo saw them before I fully processed what I was seeing. I watched his entire body language transform in an instant. The casual father disappeared, replaced by something predatory and cold. His hand moved to his jacket, and he said something sharp and low in Italian to the man beside him. The security guards were already moving, positioning themselves, hands reaching for weapons. Other diners began to notice the tension, conversations faltering, forks pausing midway to mouths. "Everybody down!" one of the 3 men shouted, pulling a gun from his jacket. "Nobody moves! Nobody dies!" The restaurant erupted into chaos. Screams, the crash of plates hitting the floor as waitstaff dropped their trays, the thunder of chairs scraping as people dove under tables. My training, the active shooter drills I'd sat through in community college, the scenarios I'd never imagined would become real, screamed at me to run, to hide, to get low. But Sophia was screaming, high and terrified, the sound of a child who just had her safe world shattered. I looked toward table 12 and saw Mr. D'Angelo trying to shield her with his body while simultaneously reaching for his weapon. His guards were engaged with the armed men, guns drawn, shouting in Italian and English, a deadly dance of threats and counter-threats. One of the intruders was moving toward the back corner, toward table 12, his gun raised, his face twisted with determination and something that looked like old hatred. "Matteo D'Angelo," he shouted. "Your brother sends his regards." Everything happened in fragments after that, disjointed, slow and fast at the same time. I saw the gun swing toward Sophia as Mr. D'Angelo, Matteo, moved to cover her completely. I saw the man's finger tighten on the trigger. I saw the angle, the trajectory, and understood with crystalline clarity that the little girl in the velvet dress was about to die. My body moved before my mind caught up. Years of being invisible, of moving through spaces without being noticed, made me fast in ways I'd never appreciated. I crossed the distance to table 12 in heartbeats, my worn flat squeaking against the tile, my water pitcher clattering to the floor. I threw myself in front of Sophia's booster seat just as the gun fired. The impact was nothing like I'd imagined. No dramatic Hollywood moment of clear pain and sudden understanding, just a white-hot spike of agony that stole my breath and my balance, sending me crashing against the table and then sliding down, down, down toward the floor. I heard more gunshots, shouting. Sophia's screams directly in my ear, high and piercing and alive. Still alive. Thank God, still alive. Strong hands caught me before I hit the ground completely. Matteo D'Angelo's face swam into view above me, his dark eyes no longer cold but blazing with something I couldn't name. Fury. Fear. Something almost like anguish. "Get her to the car," he barked to someone I couldn't see. "Now. Andrea, clear the exit." I was being lifted, cradled against a chest that smelled like expensive cologne and gunpowder. Sophia's crying filled my ears, her small hands grabbing at my arm, my sleeve, anywhere she could reach. "The lady! Papa, help the lady! She's bleeding!" "I know, Stelina. I know. She's going to be okay." His voice was doing something strange, cracking at the edges while trying to stay calm for his daughter. "You're going to be okay," he repeated, and I realized he was talking to me now, his face very close to mine as he carried me through the chaos. I tried to speak, to tell him I was fine, that he should just leave me and take his daughter somewhere safe, but my mouth wouldn't form words. Warm wetness was spreading across my stomach, soaking through my cheap white uniform shirt, and my hands felt cold despite the fire in my abdomen. The night air hit my face as he burst through the back exit. A black SUV with tinted windows was already there, engine running, back door flung open. Someone in the driver's seat, huge, bald, with scars across his face, was shouting in Italian, urgent and commanding. "Hospital will call police," Matteo said sharply in English, "for my benefit maybe. Take us to the estate. Call Dr. Russo. Tell him emergency, gunshot wound, and he has 10 minutes to be ready, or I'll kill him myself." "Papa, you can't kill the doctor," Sophia sobbed as I was loaded into the back seat. "Who will help the lady?" "Figure of speech, amore mio. Just a figure of speech." I was laid across the leather seat, and Matteo climbed in beside me, keeping pressure on my wound with hands that were surprisingly gentle for someone who commanded such violence. Sophia scrambled in after him, refusing to be separated, her tears falling on my face as she leaned over me. "I'm sorry," I managed to whisper, though I wasn't sure what I was apologizing for. The blood on his expensive suit, the disruption to his evening, taking a bullet meant for his daughter. "Don't speak," he commanded, but his voice was softer than I'd heard it all evening. "Save your strength. You're not dying tonight. I won't allow it." As if death was something he could forbid through sheer force of will. The SUV accelerated into the night, and I felt consciousness trying to slip away, gray fog creeping in at the edges of my vision. But Sophia's small hand found mine, gripping tight with all the fierce determination of a 4-year-old who'd just watched a stranger save her life. "Stay awake," she commanded in her imperious little voice. "Papa, tell her to stay awake." "You heard her," Matteo said, and there was something almost like dark humor in his tone. "Sophia has spoken. You will stay awake." So I did. Because a child asked me to. Because the most dangerous man I'd ever met was looking at me like I mattered. Because my blood was soaking into Italian leather that cost more than my life. And somehow, impossibly, I'd become visible. The hole in my shoe didn't seem so important anymore. I didn't pass out, though God knows I wanted to. The drive stretched into an eternity of bumps and turns that sent fresh agony shooting through my abdomen. Matteo kept his hand pressed firmly against the wound, his other arm bracing me against the seat as the driver, I heard him called Lorenzo, took corners at speeds that should have been illegal. Sophia never let go of my hand. Her small fingers were sticky with what I hoped was just spilled juice from dinner and not my blood. She'd stopped crying, but kept up a constant stream of chatter, as if her voice alone could keep me tethered to consciousness. "We have a big house," she told me earnestly, "with gardens and a fountain with angels. And my room is pink. Do you like pink? I have 17 stuffed animals, but Papa says that's not too many. Nonna says it's too many, but she's in heaven now, so she can't take them away." "Sophia," Matteo said quietly, never taking his eyes off my wound. "What? I'm helping. You said to keep her awake, Papa. I'm keeping her awake." Despite everything, the pain, the fear, the growing cold that was spreading through my limbs, I felt my lips twitch into something almost like a smile. This little girl, who'd just watched someone get shot protecting her, was worried about her stuffed animal collection. "What's your name?" she asked suddenly. "I don't know your name and you saved me, and that's not polite." "Emma," I managed to whisper. My throat felt dry, like I'd swallowed sand. "Emma Chen. That's a pretty name. I'm Sophia Isabel D'Angelo, and I'm 4 3/4, almost 5. This is my papa. His name is Matteo, but people call him other things too that I'm not supposed to say." "Dio mio," Matteo muttered. and I caught the edge of what might have been exasperation mixed with love in his voice. "We're here. Lorenzo, pull around to the east entrance." Andrea should have called ahead. The SUV swung through gates that opened automatically, and even through my pain-fogged vision, I could see the estate rising before us. Sophia hadn't exaggerated. It was massive. A Mediterranean-style villa with warm stone walls and terracotta roof tiles lit by soft landscape lighting that made it look like something from a movie set. Gardens stretched into darkness on either side. And yes, there was a fountain with angels, their marble faces serene and eternal. This wasn't just wealth. This was generational power, the kind that came with history and blood and secrets buried deep. The SUV barely stopped before the doors were flung open. Men in dark suits appeared, more security, I realized, and Matteo was issuing rapid-fire commands in Italian as he lifted me from the seat with shocking ease. I wasn't a small woman, but he carried me like I weighed nothing, his strides long and purposeful as we entered through a side door. The interior was all polished marble and warm wood, artwork that probably cost millions, and thick carpets that my bleeding body was about to ruin. I tried to protest, to tell him to put me down before I destroyed something priceless, but he just held me tighter. "The East Salon," someone called out ahead of us. "Dr. Russo is setting up now. 2 minutes, Matteo growled. He had 10. Where are the other 6? "Traffic boss, but he's here. He's ready." We entered a room that had been hastily converted into a makeshift operating theater. Plastic sheeting covered an antique settee. Medical equipment was being arranged on a sideboard that probably dated back to the Renaissance, and a gray-haired man in a polo shirt and khakis was snapping on surgical gloves with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd done this before. "On the settee," Dr. Russo directed, his accent placing him somewhere between Brooklyn and Bologna. "Carefully." "Gunshot wound, you said. Abdomen. Through and through, I think. She's been conscious but in shock." Matteo laid me down with surprising gentleness, finally releasing the pressure on my wound. Blood immediately soaked through my shirt, and the doctor made a disapproving sound. "Lots of blood loss. How long ago?" 20 minutes, maybe 25. "Then we're lucky." He began cutting away my uniform shirt with medical scissors, and I wanted to protest. It was my only one. I'd have to pay for a replacement, but the words wouldn't come. Young, healthy, bullet missed the major vessels or she'd be dead already. You out. It took me a moment to realize he was talking to Matteo. "I'm not leaving." The tone left no room for argument. "Then stand over there and don't interfere. You." He pointed at one of the security guards. "Get the child out of here. This isn't something she should see." "No!" Sophia's scream was immediate and piercing. "Emma needs me. I have to hold her hand. Sophia, amore, you need to go with Marco." "I won't. She saved me. She needs me to keep her awake." Tears were streaming down her face again, her small body rigid with determination. Dr. Russo looked at Matteo with the long-suffering expression of someone who'd known him a long time. "Your daughter. Your call. But if she faints, I'm not catching her." Matteo crouched beside Sophia, taking her small face between his large, scarred hands. "Stellina, listen to me. Emma is going to be fine, but Dr. Russo needs to help her, and it might be scary to watch. Why don't you go with Marco, and you can come back as soon as—" "Pinky promise she'll be okay?" Sophia demanded, holding up her smallest finger. I watched something complicated cross Matteo's face, the desire to protect his daughter from disappointment warring with the need to comfort her. "I promise," he said finally, linking his pinky with hers. "I will make sure she's okay, okay." Sophia leaned down and kissed my cheek, her tears wet against my skin. "You have to be okay, Emma. You promised Papa and he never breaks promises." Then she was being led away by a gentle-faced man, who I assumed was Marco, her sobs echoing down the hallway until a door closed somewhere, muffling the sound. "Now," Dr. Russo said briskly. "Let's see what we're working with. This is going to hurt. A lot. I can't give you anesthesia, don't have the setup for it, but I have local anesthetic and very good pain medication. You'll feel pressure and pulling, but the worst of the pain will be managed. Understand?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. The next hour was a blur of clinical pain and strange disconnection. The local anesthetic helped, but I could still feel everything, the probing, the stitching, the odd sensation of hands inside my body doing things that shouldn't be done outside of a hospital. I focused on the ceiling, on the crystal chandelier that sparkled above me, worth more than my entire apartment building. Matteo stood against the wall where the doctor had banished him, his arms crossed, his face unreadable, but his eyes never left me, dark and intense, watching every movement Dr. Russo made with the focus of a man accustomed to evaluating threats and weaknesses. "You're lucky," Dr. Russo narrated as he worked. "Bullet entered here." He indicated a spot on my left side, traveled through soft tissue, missed the intestines, missed the kidney, and exited cleanly out the back. "You'll have matching scars and a hell of a story, but no permanent damage if we keep infection at bay." "How long recovery?" Matteo asked, his voice tight. 6 weeks minimum before strenuous activity. 2 weeks before she should even be walking around much. She needs rest, proper nutrition, antibiotics, and monitoring for infection. He glanced up at Matteo while his hands continued their work. "She also needs to file a police report. Gunshot wounds have to be reported." "No police." Matteo's tone was absolute. "Matteo." "I said no police, Russo. She's under my protection now. That's all anyone needs to know." I wanted to argue. Wanted to say that I didn't need his protection, that I had a life and a job and a mother who would be frantic when I didn't come home. But my phone was back at the restaurant, probably in my locker. And my mother thought I was working a double shift tonight anyway. She wouldn't expect me until tomorrow afternoon. Tomorrow, when I was supposed to be at the bakery at 5 a.m., kneading dough and filling pastry cases. "My job," I mumbled. "I have to call. They'll fire me." "You don't have that job anymore," Matteo said flatly. "Consider yourself employed elsewhere now. You can't just—" "I can, and I did. You took a bullet meant for my daughter. Your previous employment is no longer relevant." Dr. Russo made a sound that might have been agreement or disapproval. It was hard to tell. He was closing up the exit wound now, his sutures neat and precise. "All done. She needs fluids, antibiotics, and sleep. Lots of sleep. I'll stay tonight to monitor her, but she should be stable." "The blue suite." Matteo directed someone I couldn't see. "It's prepared?" "Yes, boss. Fresh linens, medical supplies in the adjacent bathroom." I was lifted again, this time by 2 security guards who handled me with surprising care, and carried up a sweeping staircase that would have made Scarlett O'Hara weep with envy. The blue suite turned out to be larger than my entire apartment, decorated in shades of cream and sapphire with furniture that belonged in a museum. They laid me in a bed with sheets that felt like liquid silk, and despite everything, the pain, the fear, the complete surreality of my situation, my body surrendered to exhaustion the moment my head hit the pillow. I dreamed of gunshots and angels, of a little girl's hand in mine, and dark eyes that watched me like I was something precious instead of invisible. I woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and the worst pain I'd ever experienced radiating from my abdomen. For a moment, I couldn't remember where I was or why everything hurt. Then it came back in a rush. The restaurant, the guns, Sophia's screams, Matteo's face above me, a face that was currently watching me from a chair positioned beside the bed. He looked different in daylight, less like a shadowy figure from a nightmare and more like a real person, still dangerous. That aura never fully dissipated, but more human somehow. He'd changed out of his blood-stained suit into dark slacks and a black shirt, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with muscle and marked with more scars. His hair was slightly mussed, like he'd been running his hands through it, and there were dark circles under his eyes that suggested he hadn't slept. "You're awake," he observed, his accent slightly thicker than it had been last night. "How long?" My voice came out like sandpaper. 14 hours. It's nearly noon. Dr. Russo said you'd sleep. The pain medication and shock. How do you feel?" "Like I got shot." "Nah." I tried to sit up and immediately regretted it, gasping as fire spread through my middle. He was beside me in an instant, hands gently pressing me back down. "Don't move. You'll tear the stitches. Here." He adjusted the bed with a remote control, raising the head so I was more upright without having to use my abdominal muscles. "Better?" "Yes." "Thank you." The words felt inadequate. "Where's Sophia?" Something softened in his face at the mention of his daughter. "At her music lesson. She wanted to stay. Insisted on it, actually, but I couldn't have her missing her routine." She made me promise to wake her the moment you were conscious." He checked his watch. "A Patek Philippe that probably cost more than a car. She'll be done in 20 minutes. Prepare yourself for an interrogation. She has questions." Despite the pain, I felt that almost smile trying to surface again. "She's remarkable. She's everything." Simple words, but they carried the weight of absolute truth. "You saved her life last night. There are no words sufficient to thank you for that. No repayment adequate for such a debt." I didn't think. I just moved. Without hesitation, without consideration for your own safety. "Why?" He leaned forward, studying me with an intensity that made me want to look away. "You don't know us. We're strangers. Why would you sacrifice yourself for a stranger's child? She's a child. That's all the reason I needed." He was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes searching my face like he was trying to solve a complex equation. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Someone looking for an angle, a reward. People don't do things without expecting something in return. Not in my world." "Then maybe your world is different from mine," I said softly. "It is. Dangerously so." He stood, moving to a sideboard where a tray had been set up with water, juice, and what looked like broth. "Which is why you need to understand something, Emma Chen. You're under my protection now. That means you stay here, in this estate, until I'm certain the threat has been neutralized." "What threat?" "Those men at the restaurant were sent by my half-brother." He said it casually, like discussing the weather, but I caught the edge of cold fury beneath the words. A reminder that family doesn't always mean loyalty. They knew I'd be there with Sophia. They knew exactly when and where to find us. "How?" "That's what I'm going to find out." He poured water into a glass and brought it to me, holding it steady while I sipped. "But until I do, until every man involved is found and dealt with, you remain here. It's not a request. I have a mother, a life, jobs, bills." "You can't just keep me prisoner." "I'm keeping you alive," he interrupted, his voice hard. "The men who attacked last night saw your face. They know you protected Sophia. In their eyes, that makes you part of my world now, whether you want to be or not. And people in my world don't get the luxury of normal lives." The words settled over me like a weight. I'd saved a child's life, and somehow, impossibly, lost my own in the process. "My mother," I whispered. "She'll be worried. She needs her medication, and I'm the one who—" "Already handled. What's her address?" I told him, too tired and overwhelmed to question how he'd make it work. He pulled out his phone, one of several I noticed in his pockets, and made a call in rapid Italian. I caught words that sounded like mother, medication, and discreet. When he hung up, he looked at me with something that might have been respect. "Someone will check on her. Tell her you're working a special assignment that requires you to stay on site for a few weeks. Your rent will be paid, her medications delivered, and she'll have a check-in call from you this evening to confirm you're safe. Acceptable?" It wasn't. Not really. But what choice did I have? "Thank you," I managed. "Don't thank me. You're here because of me, because my family's poison touched you. The least I can do is ensure your other responsibilities don't suffer for it." Before I could respond, the door burst open, and Sophia flew into the room like a small, velvet-clad tornado. She'd changed into a purple dress with matching ribbons in her hair, and her face lit up when she saw me awake. "Emma, you're okay. Papa said you'd be okay, and you are." She scrambled onto the bed with complete disregard for my injury, and Matteo moved to stop her, but I shook my head slightly. "Gentle, Stelina," he warned. She nestled carefully against my side, her small hand finding mine again. I was so scared. The doctor said you lost lots of blood and might not wake up for a long time. But Papa said you were strong and you'd be fine. Were you scared? A little, I admitted. Me too. But you saved me. You're a hero like in my storybooks. She looked up at me with those enormous brown eyes, so full of trust and admiration that it made my chest ache. Will you stay with us? Papa says you have to stay for a while to get better. You can stay in this room. It's the pretty one. And I can show you my toys and we can have tea parties and everything. Over her head, I met Matteo's gaze. He was watching us with an expression I couldn't quite read. Protective, possessive, and something darker that sent a shiver down my spine despite the warmth of the room. "I'll stay for a while," I told Sophia, because what else could I say to a child who'd watched me bleed? Good. She settled more comfortably against me, careful of the bandages she could probably feel through the thin nightgown someone had dressed me in. "Then you'll be safe. Papa keeps everyone safe. Nothing bad can happen here." I wished I could believe that, but as I looked at Matteo D'Angelo, at the scars on his hands, the coldness in his eyes when they left his daughter's face, the armed guards I could hear moving in the hallway outside, I knew that I'd stepped into a world where safety was an illusion and violence was always just one wrong move away. I'd saved a child's life, and somehow, in doing so, I'd bound my fate to a man who commanded death with the same ease that other people commanded their morning coffee. The hole in my shoe seemed like a lifetime ago. The days blurred together in a haze of pain medication and surreal luxury. Dr. Russo visited twice daily, checking my wounds with clinical efficiency while making small talk about weather and sports, as if this were a normal house call and not a clandestine medical operation in a mafia compound. Because that's what this was, I'd finally accepted. Matteo D'Angelo wasn't just wealthy. He was Cosa Nostra, the real thing. The kind of man whose name made grown men cross themselves and look over their shoulders. I'd Googled him on the tablet someone had left on my nightstand. The results were sparse, deliberate, I suspected. A few business articles about legitimate investments, real estate holdings, import, export companies. Nothing that directly said mafia boss, but the absence of information was telling in itself. Men that powerful didn't stay under the radar by accident. Sophia became my constant companion. She'd arrive every morning after breakfast, carrying coloring books and stuffed animals, chattering endlessly about her day. I learned she took piano lessons on Tuesdays and Thursdays, had ballet on Wednesdays, and spoke 3 languages, Italian, English, and enough Spanish to order ice cream and compliment people's dogs. "Nonna taught me Spanish before she went to heaven," she explained one afternoon, carefully coloring inside the lines of a unicorn. "She said being pretty isn't enough. You have to be smart too. Papa says the same thing but with more words." "Your Nonna sounds wise." She was. But then she got sick, and the doctors couldn't fix her, and Papa was very sad. He doesn't smile as much since Nonna died. And Mama... She paused, her crayon hovering. "Mama died when I was a baby, so I don't remember her, but Papa says she was beautiful and brave." My heart clenched. This little girl, surrounded by wealth and protection, had already known so much loss. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. It's okay. Papa says everyone goes to heaven eventually, and they watch over us. So Mama and Nonna are watching, and they probably saw you save me. I bet they're happy about that." Before I could respond, Matteo appeared in the doorway. He'd taken to checking on me every few hours. Never announced, just suddenly there, his presence filling whatever room he entered. "Sophia, time for your tutor." But Emma and I are coloring, now Stelina. The gentleness in his voice didn't hide the command underneath. Sophia sighed dramatically, but gathered her supplies. She kissed my cheek, a habit she'd developed, and skipped out, leaving me alone with her father. The air always felt different when Sophia left. Heavier. Charged with something I didn't want to examine too closely. Matteo moved to the window, his back to me, hands in his pockets. The afternoon light cast him in silhouette, emphasizing the breadth of his shoulders, the rigid way he held himself. "The men from the restaurant," he said quietly. "They've been found." My stomach dropped. And they won't be a problem anymore." He turned to face me, and his expression was carefully blank, the kind of blankness that hid terrible things. "My half-brother, however, remains at large, which means you remain here. For how long?" "As long as necessary." He crossed the room, stopping at the foot of my bed. "You understand what happened that night made you visible to people who operate in shadows. There are rules in my world, codes. You protected what's mine. That creates obligations. I don't want obligations. I just want my life back. That life ended the moment you stepped in front of that bullet." His voice was matter-of-fact, neither cruel nor kind, simply stating reality. "The woman who served water and cleared plates. She's gone. The woman who exists now is someone my enemies will target to get to me, to get to Sophia. That's insane. That's my world. He moved closer, and I caught his scent. Something expensive and masculine that shouldn't have affected me but did. But I protect what's mine, Emma. And whether you like it or not, you're mine now. Mine to keep safe. Mine to provide for. Mine to... He stopped himself, jaw tightening. Yours to what? Nothing. The medication. You need another dose soon. I'll have it brought up. He was already turning away, that careful control back in place. Matteo? His name felt strange on my tongue. Too familiar. Too intimate. He froze. Thank you. For taking care of my mother. For the medical care. For... everything. He looked back at me, and something flickered in those dark eyes. Surprise, maybe, or something more dangerous. You shouldn't thank me. I'm the reason you're in this situation. You're also the reason I'm alive. Anyone would have... No, anyone wouldn't have. You could have left me at the restaurant, let the ambulance handle it, but you brought me here. You're keeping me safe. That means something. He stared at me for a long moment, and I saw the war playing out behind his eyes. Whatever he wanted to say, he swallowed it down. Rest. I'll check on you later. He was gone before I could respond, the door closing with a soft click that somehow sounded like finality. 2 weeks passed. My wound healed with remarkable speed. Dr. Russo's skill and whatever expensive antibiotics they were pumping into me did their job. I graduated from bed rest to supervised walks around my suite, then short trips to the garden with Sophia as my enthusiastic guide. The estate was magnificent. Manicured lawns, rose gardens that belonged in magazines, and that angel fountain Sophia loved so much. She'd make wishes and throw pennies, convinced that heaven was listening. I tried not to think about the armed men stationed at every entrance, the cameras hidden in decorative light fixtures, the way every delivery was inspected by security before being allowed through the gates. This was a fortress, disguised as paradise. Matteo remained a constant, unsettling presence. He'd appear at dinner, elaborate affairs where Sophia insisted I join them at a table that could seat 20. He'd ask about my recovery in that formal, controlled way of his. But his eyes would linger, watching me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. I caught him once, late at night when I couldn't sleep, and ventured to the library I'd been told I could access. He was there, sitting in darkness, a glass of amber liquid in his hand, staring at nothing. Can't sleep? He asked without looking at me. Pain makes it difficult. I hovered in the doorway, uncertain. I didn't mean to intrude. You're not. He gestured to the vast room lined with books. This is yours to use. Everything here is yours to use. I moved inside, trailing my fingers along leather spines. It's a beautiful collection. My father's. He believed that power came from knowledge as much as fear. There was something bitter in his voice. He was wrong. Fear is simpler, more effective. You don't believe that, don't I? Now he did look at me and his eyes were shadowed. You think you know me, Emma Chen? Because you've spent 2 weeks in my home. Because my daughter adores you. Because I've ensured your comfort. I think, I said carefully, that a man who rules by fear alone wouldn't read bedtime stories to his daughter in 3 languages. Wouldn't remember that she prefers her pasta with butter instead of sauce. Wouldn't have carried a bleeding stranger to safety. That stranger saved my daughter. Obligation? Is that what you tell yourself? I don't know where the courage came from. Maybe the late hour. Maybe the pain medication still in my system. That everything you do is just obligation and fear? He stood abruptly, and suddenly he was crossing the distance between us, stopping close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. Close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from him. You should be afraid of me, he said softly, dangerously. You should be counting the days until you can leave and never look back. Should I? My heart was hammering, but I didn't step away. Yes. But his hand came up, fingertips barely brushing my cheek, a touch so gentle it might have been my imagination. Because I'm not a good man, Emma. I've done things that would make you run screaming. I will do worse things before I'm done. And the fact that you're standing here, looking at me like I'm something other than a monster." He pulled back sharply, turning away. "Go to bed. And stay away from me when you can't sleep. It's safer that way." I left, but his words followed me. So did the memory of that almost touch. And the look in his eyes that said he wanted to do far more than brush my cheek. Something was building between us. Something dangerous and inevitable. And I was terrified that when it finally broke, I wouldn't survive it. 3 weeks into my captivity, though no one called it that, I was cleared for normal activity. The stitches had dissolved, leaving angry red scars that Dr. Russo assured me would fade to silver with time. I could move without pain, could breathe deeply without feeling like my insides were tearing apart. I should have been relieved. Instead, I felt restless, trapped. "You're healing beautifully, Doctor," Russo announced during his final checkup. "No signs of infection, excellent tissue regeneration. You're young and strong." That made all the difference. He packed his medical bag with practiced efficiency. "I'll leave instructions for scar care, but honestly, you don't need me anymore." Matteo stood in the corner of my room. His room, I reminded myself, in his house where I was his unwilling guest. "You're certain?" "Completely. She's recovered remarkably well. Dr. E." Russo glanced at me with something like sympathy, though I'd recommend she continue taking it easy for another week or two. No heavy lifting, no strenuous exercise. After he left, silence stretched between us. Matteo hadn't been alone with me since that night in the library. He'd been conspicuously absent at dinners, sending word that business required his attention. Sophia complained about it constantly, but I understood. He was avoiding me, avoiding whatever had sparked between us in the darkness. "So," I said finally, unable to bear the tension, "I'm healed. When can I go home?" His jaw tightened. "The situation with my half-brother hasn't been resolved. It's been 3 weeks. How long does resolving take? As long as necessary." He moved to the window, his default position when he didn't want to look at me. "Carlo is smart. He's gone underground, hiding behind legitimate fronts and neutral territories. But he'll surface eventually. They always do. And until then, I'm just supposed to stay here, living in your guest room, eating your food, playing with your daughter like some kind of live-in nanny. You say that like it's a hardship." There was an edge to his voice now. "You have everything you could need. Your mother is cared for, your bills paid. You're safe. Comfortable." "I'm a prisoner." The words burst out before I could stop them. A very comfortable, well-fed prisoner, but a prisoner nonetheless. You can dress it up with silk sheets and gourmet meals, but I didn't choose this. I didn't choose any of this. He turned slowly, and the look on his face made my breath catch. Not anger, something far more complicated. "You think I don't know that? You think I don't see how you look at the gates every time we walk in the garden? How you flinch when my men walk past? How you're counting the days until you can run from here and never look back? Then let me go." "I can't." The words came out rough, almost anguished. "Cristo, Emma, if I could, I would. But you don't understand what you've become in my world. You're not just the woman who saved my daughter. You're a weakness, a vulnerability. Every man who wants to hurt me now knows exactly where to strike. That's not my fault. I know." He closed the distance between us in 3 strides, and suddenly we were too close, the air crackling with tension. "I know it's not your fault, but it doesn't change reality. It doesn't change that Carlo has already put a price on your head, that 2 other families have inquired about your location, that keeping you here, keeping you close, is the only way I can guarantee your safety." My heart was pounding. So what am I supposed to do? Live here forever? Become part of your household staff? A permanent guest who can never leave? Would that be so terrible? His voice dropped, became softer, more dangerous. "You and Sophia have become inseparable. She asks about you constantly, wants you at every meal, every bedtime story. She hasn't attached to anyone like this since her grandmother died. Don't use your daughter to manipulate me." "I'm not. I'm telling you the truth." His hand came up, and this time he didn't stop himself. His fingers traced the line of my jaw, tilted my face up to his. And the truth is, Emma Chen, that you've become important, not just to Sophia, to me. I should have pulled away, should have reminded him that he was a criminal, that this was insane, that I wanted my normal, boring, safe life back. But his touch was fire on my skin. And when I looked into those dark eyes, I saw something that terrified me more than his guns or his guards or his terrible reputation. I saw hunger, raw and desperate and barely controlled. Mateo. His name came out breathless. Tell me to stop. His thumb brushed my lower lip. Tell me this is wrong, that you want nothing to do with me, that the moment I let you leave, you'll disappear and never think of me again. Tell me, and I'll step back. I'll keep my distance. I'll be nothing more than the man who's keeping you safe. I should have said all of those things. Should have drawn a line we couldn't cross. Instead, I whispered, "What if I can't?" Something broke in his expression. The careful control he maintained so rigorously shattered, and suddenly his mouth was on mine, demanding, consuming, stealing my breath and my sense and every reason I had to push him away. I kissed him back. God help me. I kissed him back with 3 weeks of tension and fear and unwanted attraction pouring out in a rush. My hands found his shirt, fisting in the expensive fabric, pulling him closer even as my mind screamed that this was wrong, dangerous, impossible. He groaned against my mouth, one arm wrapping around my waist, carefully, always carefully of my healing wound, while his other hand tangled in my hair. The kiss deepened, turned savage, and I tasted desperation in it, his desperation, mine. The desperation of two people who'd been circling each other like wary animals, knowing this was inevitable but fighting it anyway. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against mine. "This is insane," I whispered. "I know. You're a criminal. A murderer, probably. Everything about this is wrong. I know." His hands tightened on me, possessive. "But I can't let you go. Even if Carlo disappeared tomorrow, even if every threat vanished, I don't think I could watch you walk away now. That's not fair. Nothing about this is fair, Kara. But it's the truth." He pulled back enough to look at me, and his expression was raw in a way I'd never seen. "You walked into my life by accident, threw yourself in front of a bullet without hesitation, earned my daughter's love without trying, and somewhere in the past 3 weeks, you became mine in a way that has nothing to do with obligation or protection. I'm not a possession. No. You're far more dangerous than that." His smile was dark, edged with something that might have been self-mockery. "You're a conscience, a reminder that there's more to life than power and fear and violence. Sophia sees it too, why she's so drawn to you. You're light in a very dark world, Emma. I'm a waitress from the wrong side of town who can barely pay her mother's medical bills. You're the woman who saved my daughter. The woman who looks at me like I'm a man instead of a monster. The woman I've been trying not to want for 3 goddamn weeks." He kissed me again, softer this time, almost reverent. "And I'm done pretending I can let you go." A knock on the door shattered the moment. Mateo stepped back instantly, his expression smoothing into that careful blankness as one of his men appeared. "Boss, sorry to interrupt. Carlo's been spotted. Northern District, meeting with the Russos. Lorenzo has a team mobilizing." Mateo's entire demeanor changed. The man who'd been kissing me moments ago disappeared, replaced by the cold, calculating dawn I'd glimpsed that first night. "Tell Lorenzo to wait for me. I want Carlo alive. We need to know who else is involved." He glanced at me, and something like regret flickered across his face. "I have to go. Stay inside, don't go near the windows, and keep Sophia with you until I return." "Mateo." "I'll be back before dinner. I promise." He was already moving toward the door, checking the gun I now realized he always carried. "Andrea will be stationed outside your room. If anything feels wrong, anything at all, you call for him immediately. Understand?" I nodded, my lips still tingling from his kiss, my heart still racing from his confession. He paused in the doorway, looked back at me one more time. "When I return, we're going to talk about this, about us, about what happens next." Then he was gone, leaving me alone with the taste of him on my lips and the terrifying realization that I'd just crossed a line I could never uncross. I'd kissed a Mafia Don, wanted him, craved more. And the worst part? I wasn't sure I regretted it. Sophia found me an hour later, curled up in the window seat of my room, staring out at the gardens without really seeing them. "Emma." She climbed up beside me, tucking herself under my arm with the easy affection of a child who'd never known rejection. "Miss Rosa says Papa had to go to work. He always goes to work at the wrong times, but he said you'd play with me, so it's okay." "Did he?" I smiled despite everything. "Well, he didn't say it, but I know he meant it." She pulled out a book from the pile she'd brought. "Will you read to me? This one's my favorite. It's about a princess who saves herself instead of waiting for a prince. Nonna gave it to me." I took the book, and as I began to read, Sophia's small warm body pressed against my side. I felt something settle in my chest. Something that felt dangerously like belonging. This little girl had lost her mother, her grandmother. She'd watched me take a bullet meant for her. And somehow, in the chaos and violence and impossibility of it all, she'd decided I was safe, that I was hers. Just like her father had. I was trapped in a world of violence and danger, tangled up with a man who dealt in death, kept here by threats I barely understood. But as Sophia's eyes grew heavy and she drifted off to sleep against my shoulder, her hand clutching mine with absolute trust, I realized the most terrifying thing of all. I wasn't sure I wanted to leave anymore. Mateo didn't return before dinner, or after. As evening bled into night and Sophia was finally coaxed to bed by Miss Rosa, her nanny, a warm Italian woman in her 60s who'd been with the family for years, I found myself pacing my room like a caged animal. Andrea stood outside my door, a silent sentinel. I'd asked him twice if there was news. Both times he'd given me the same answer. The boss will return when his business is finished. By midnight, I'd worked myself into a state of anxiety that had nothing to do with my own safety, and everything to do with the man who'd kissed me like I was oxygen and he was drowning. What if something had gone wrong? What if his half-brother had been expecting him? What if... The sound of vehicles in the front drive made my heart leap. I rushed to the window, pressing my face against the glass like Sophia often did. 3 black SUVs were pulling through the gates, and even from this distance, I could see the tension in how the men moved as they exited the vehicles. Then I saw him. Mateo, climbing out of the middle vehicle, his shirt spattered with something dark that made my stomach clench. He was moving stiffly, favoring his left side, and when Lorenzo tried to help him, he shook off the assistance with an impatient gesture. I was out of my room before I could think better of it, flying down the stairs in the nightgown and robe someone had provided, my bare feet silent on the marble floors. Andrea called after me, but I ignored him. Mateo was in the foyer when I reached him, giving orders to his men in rapid Italian. He looked up at my approach, and something flashed in his eyes, surprise, then something warmer, more dangerous. "Emma, you should be... You're hurt." I could see it now, the way he held himself, the pallor beneath his olive skin. What happened? "Nothing that concerns you," but his voice lacked conviction. "Bullshit." The word felt foreign on my tongue, but effective. His eyebrows rose. "You're bleeding." "Let me see." "It's just a graze." "Let me see." For a moment I thought he'd refuse. Then something in his expression shifted, and he nodded to his men. "Leave us. Lorenzo, make sure Sophia stays asleep. I don't want her seeing this." When we were alone, I helped him to the nearest sitting room. He moved like every step hurt, and when he finally sank onto the leather sofa, a grimace crossed his face. "Shirt off," I ordered, channeling every ounce of authority I'd learned from watching Dr. Russo. "Kara, I don't think..." "Now, Mateo." He complied, unbuttoning his ruined shirt with movements that were too careful, too controlled. When he pulled it away, I saw the damage. A bullet wound across his ribs. Not deep, but long and ugly, still seeping blood. Bruises were already forming, dark purple against his skin. "Cristo," I breathed. "This needs stitches." "I've had worse." "That's not reassuring." I found a bar cart in the corner, because of course there was a bar cart, and grabbed the most expensive-looking bottle of liquor. This is going to hurt. I can handle... His words cut off in a hiss as I poured the alcohol directly onto the wound. Merda, a warning would have been nice. You were shot. You don't get warnings. But my hands were gentle as I used a decorative napkin to clean around the wound. What happened? Carlo was there, as reported, but he wasn't alone. He'd brought reinforcements. Russians, which means he's more desperate than I thought. We had the numbers, but he grunted as I applied more pressure. One of them got a lucky shot before we could secure the situation. And Carlo? His smile was cold, utterly devoid of humor. Is no longer a problem. For you or for Sophia, the threat is neutralized. I should have been horrified. Should have recognized the clinical way he discussed violence, the ease with which he spoke of eliminating his own brother. But all I felt was relief, bone-deep, overwhelming relief. So I can go home? The words came out smaller than I intended. His hand caught mine, stilling my ministrations. When I met his eyes, they were blazing with intensity. Is that what you want? To go back to your apartment, your 2 jobs, your life where you're invisible to everyone around you? That's not fair. Nothing about this is fair. I told you that already. He pulled me closer, until I was standing between his legs, forced to look down at him. But I'm going to ask you anyway, Emma Chen. Do you want to leave? Walk away from this house, from Sophia, from me, and pretend the past 3 weeks never happened? My heart was hammering. I don't know what you're asking. Yes, you do. His free hand came up to cup my face, thumb tracing my cheekbone. I'm asking you to stay, not as a prisoner, not as a guest, as something more, something permanent. You're asking me to be your mistress. The word tasted bitter. No. His voice was fierce. I'm asking you to be mine, in every way that matters. You've already won Sophia's heart. She asks about you constantly, includes you in every plan she makes. And you've won mine, though I fought it every step of the way. Matteo, we barely know each other. I know you threw yourself in front of a bullet without hesitation. I know you read to my daughter in 3 different languages because you learned her favorites. I know you look at me like I'm a man worth saving instead of a monster worth running from. I know that when I thought about letting you go, about watching you walk out those gates, something in my chest felt like it was tearing apart. His grip tightened, just slightly. And I know that I'm being selfish, that you deserve better than a man like me, a life like this. But I'm asking anyway, because for the first time in 8 years since my wife died, I want something beyond revenge and protection. I want you. Tears were burning behind my eyes. This is crazy. Completely insane, he agreed. But say yes anyway. Stay with us. Let me give you everything you've never had. Security, comfort, a family who adores you. Let me court you properly the way you deserve. Let me prove that I can be more than what the world thinks I am. And if I say no, pain flickered across his face. Then I'll have Lorenzo drive you home tomorrow. Your mother will be cared for. I'll set up a trust fund for her medical expenses. You'll never have to worry about money again. But you'll be free to go, and I'll never contact you again. It will be as if these weeks never happened. Except they had happened, and I'd changed in ways I was only beginning to understand. I looked at this man, this dangerous, complicated, broken man, and saw not just the Don who commanded fear and respect. I saw the father who read bedtime stories in 3 languages, the man who'd carried me bleeding through a restaurant and refused to let me die, the widower who'd been alone for 8 years, raising his daughter in a fortress, keeping everyone at arm's length until I'd crashed into his life by accident. I need conditions, I said finally. Hope flared in his eyes. Name them. My mother. I want to see her regularly. No restrictions. No guards following me when I visit her. 1 guard. He countered immediately. At a distance. The threat to you may be neutralized, but I have other enemies. I need to know you're protected. I nodded slowly. That was reasonable, even if I hated it. I want honest answers. No more mysterious business that I'm not allowed to ask about. If I'm going to be part of this world, I need to understand it. Within reason. There are things I can't tell you, not for secrecy, but for your own protection. The less you know about certain operations, the safer you are legally. And Sophia, I took a breath. If I stay, I'm not just the woman who lives here. I want to be part of her life, really part of it. I want to help raise her, make decisions about her care, be there for her. You already are. His voice was soft. She loves you, Emma. So if you're asking permission to mother my daughter, you have it. You've had it since the moment she refused to let go of your hand. The tears spilled over then, because this was real. This impossible, insane situation was actually happening. And I was actually considering it. One more thing, I whispered. You said you'd court me properly. What does that mean in your world? His smile was slow, devastating. It means I do everything right. Dinners, flowers, conversations that last until dawn. It means I introduce you properly to my family, the legitimate ones who don't try to kill me. It means I give you time to be sure, to understand what you're choosing, and when you're ready, when you've decided that you can live with what I am and what I do, then I marry you. Marry me? My voice came out strangled. Did you think I'd ask you to stay for anything less? I don't share, Emma. I don't do temporary. Either you're mine completely or not at all. His thumb wiped away my tears, so yes, I'm asking you to marry me. Eventually. When you're ready. When you've had time to be absolutely certain. I laughed, the sound somewhere between a sob and genuine amusement. This is the strangest proposal I've ever heard. Is it yes? I looked at him, really looked at him, at the man who'd turned my life upside down, who represented everything dangerous and forbidden, at the father who would burn the world down for his daughter, at the widower who'd been alone for so long he'd forgotten what it meant to want something for himself, at the man who'd kissed me like I was precious. It's yes, I whispered. God help me, it's yes. He pulled me down to him, mindful of his wound, and kissed me with a gentleness that made my heart ache. This kiss was different from the one earlier. Less desperate, more certain, a promise instead of a question. When we broke apart, he pressed his forehead to mine. I'll make you happy. I swear it. You'll try not to get shot anymore, I countered, because watching you come home bleeding takes years off my life. I'll try, but I can't promise. I know. I touched his face, traced the scar along his jaw. I know what you are, Mateo, what you do, and I'm choosing it anyway, choosing you, as long as you choose me too. Always, he breathed. From the moment you threw yourself in front of that bullet, you became mine. I just had to wait for you to realize you were mine too. 6 months later, I stood in the garden where Sophia threw pennies and made wishes, wearing a dress that cost more than my old apartment. The fountain angels watched serenely as Matteo D'Angelo slipped a ring onto my finger, not in front of hundreds of guests, but with just his daughter, his legitimate family members, and the doctor who'd saved my life in attendance. Sophia was flower girl, of course, in a dress she'd picked out herself, purple with sparkles, because she'd informed us that white was boring and love should be colorful. She took her duties seriously, scattering petals with solemn concentration. My mother was there too, healthy and smiling. Her medication costs no longer a burden we carried alone. She'd cried when I told her about Matteo, worried that I was making a mistake. But then she'd met him, seen the way he looked at me, the way Sophia climbed into my lap without hesitation, and she'd understood. I'd found something I didn't know I was looking for. A family, a home, a man who saw me, really saw me, and decided I was worth keeping. As Matteo kissed me, sealing promises that we'd both keep, Sophia cheered, and the angels smiled, and I thought about the poor girl I'd been 6 months ago, invisible, overlooked, living a small, careful life. That girl had died the moment she stepped in front of a bullet, and in her place stood someone stronger, someone loved, someone who'd walked into darkness and found light waiting on the other side. Happy? Matteo murmured against my lips. I looked at Sophia, dancing in her sparkly dress. At my mother, laughing with Miss Rosa. At the man who'd turned my world upside down and showed me what it meant to be seen. Deliriously, I whispered back, and meant every word. Because sometimes the best stories start with the worst moments. Sometimes you have to bleed to find out what you're made of. And sometimes, just sometimes, saving someone else's life means finding your own. The hole in my shoe was long gone, replaced by Italian leather and a life I never could have imagined. But I'd trade none of it, not for anything in the world.